I'll spotlight the video and then I will put you all on mute all. And then I'm going to open my chat button. So if you have any questions while I am working, that's the place to ask them. So we'll say hello and welcome to everybody. So on this lovely warm June day, and we're in week 8 of our 10-week programme. So I know some of you are paying as you go, so you haven't been to all 8 classes. So I'll just tantalise you with what we did last week. So I'm saying that for all the ladies who are watching on record, because I know that the ladies here have been here throughout. So we made little modern woven baskets last week, which weren't quite as difficult as they looked. But the key to them was soaking. Unless you were using really, really fresh materials, fresh willow, fresh dogwood that had some flexibility in the stems, you would have probably like me, bought the materials. This was basket cane, and I know some of the ladies who have come to class were buying willow, and you would have to soak it. And last week it was very warm, so I think it was being quite challenging with the soaking and then having taking it out of the water to actually get on with your weaving. But the actual weaving, I think you'll probably agree with me, was quite simple to do. It wasn't so much a weave as a sort of tuck and lift. So that was the very sort of modern open basket. And then we had a bowl of flowers in here. Mine have died. I was using flowers from the garden mainly. And the trick was with your flowers was to get quite a heavy dish, because the baskets are sort of a natural free form. So if I'm to sort of turn around on the side, it's got a sort of jaunty lean to one side. But when I turned it that way around and weighted it down with my flowers, it all worked out fine. So hopefully you didn't get any spillages from your basket during the week. So I'm going to set that to one side. And then just talk briefly about what we're doing last week. So compared to all the other classes, the other sessions we've been having on Zoom since, it's coming up, it's over a year now we've been Zooming. We started off with quite a lot of crafting elements because we couldn't go out to the shops to buy flowers. And then we have, I think you'll agree that this summer, flowers have taken a front seat in what we've been doing. So we're going to take a little bit of a crafting step back for next week, and we're going to do some simple macrame. So I hope that doesn't frighten you off too much, but combining two very fashionable trends at the moment, which is macrame, which if you're like me, a schoolgirl in the 1970s, you may well have remembered making macrame bits and pieces and owl wall hangings. But if you're not, if you're of younger vintage, you'll be excited to know that we're doing some macrame, because it is all the rage, and particularly macrame wall hangings and dried flowers. So I'm going to show you just some very simple knots next week. We're going to describe it as a belt. I'm not quite sure what to call. It's going to be a skinny wall hanging. And in my mind, I'm going to hang it over either a coat hook on the back of my door as a bit of decoration, or I have got a peg rail in my kitchen, which is a great place for sort of hanging all the things that I make over time. So what do you need for next week? Well, I have bought some rope for my macrame. So it's quite chunky rope. And I thought it might be quite nice to have two different colours. And I've also got some more of a cottony crochet yarn. And if you look at the workshop sheet for the class, I've given you the links, I think, to the exact products that I've got here. But if you don't want to go out and buy anything specially, any kind of cord will do. So if, for instance, you are a crafter and you like sewing and making pillows and cushion covers, if you've ever piped around the edge of your pillows or made drawstring bags, you may have piping cord that could be used. And if you want to make something really neat and petite, you could use good old garden string. So don't feel that you've got to go out and buy these. They are affordable, but they are more expensive than a bit of string. But you will need quite long lengths. So probably to make what we're making, I'm envisaging a bit of macrame, it's about this tall, that we'll need 4 lengths of string, or actually 2 very long lengths folded in half. And you're probably thinking of the total length between 3 and 4 meters. So don't pre-cut is all I'm going to say, but if you're looking for bits and pieces, you're going to need meters worth of yarn, string, cord, not short sections, because the way we make the knots, it eats up quite a lot of the cord. So have plenty with you. And then to take on a bit of that dried flower vibe, we're going to be decorating. It's going to be almost like a very fancy bell ringer's root ball. And I don't know whether you've ever seen them ring bells, but they always have this sort of the bit where I don't know anything about bell ringing really. I don't know why I've gone off on this tangent, but you always get a bit where I guess the bit they hold, and it's normally quite colourful. And that's what I've got in mind, is this sort of narrow belt with a colourful bit of flowers. So I'm going to be using dried flowers, partly from my stash, but you can buy, again, dried flowers are really, really fashionable at the moment. So if you do want to buy some flowers in, you should be able to find them easily enough online. And I think last time we did dry flowers, I bought mine from a company called the Great British Florist, I believe. But you can find them all sorts of places. And if you are into pressing flowers, it may be that you might want to put pressed flowers on yours, or it may be that you just want to stick with a cord and try a new technique. So just something for everybody really, going a bit more fashionable before we finish with our project on week 10, which I'll tell you more about next time. So I'm just going to move these bits out of the way and come back to this week. So I've got in front of me things you can't see because they're glass. I've got myself a glass dish because we're going to be making these little posies using bear grass, and you can see my 2 bunches of bear grass over my shoulder. But because the bear grass is living, I need to put it in a container where it can have water. So I've got this dish, and it looks like I don't know whether it was a fruit bowl or it could be a casserole dish, a trifle bowl. I did actually buy this though from my floristry wholesaler many years ago. Not quite sure what I bought it for originally. So you need some sort of dish or plate, shallow bowl that you can put your containers in, because the bear grass is going to be on the outside of the container. It's going to be the vase that we're going to put our flowers in. And if you think, oh, I'm not quite sure about that, you could always, I've got a drinking glass here, and we can adapt the technique, and I can show you how you can make a very similar look, but using a drinking glass. And obviously anything inside your glass will have a water source because you'll have water here. Anything that you put on the outside won't, and it will slowly dry out over time. So you've got a couple of options there. So we're quite light on materials this week. So a bit of glassware to hold the finished posies. I've then got my floristry scissors, and then my favourite, which is the bind wire, which if you've been following me for a while, you know I'm using lots of this. So it's paper covered wire. It's a bit like garden string, but you don't have to spend ages knotting it. You can just twist tie it. And then just as an emergency extra, I have delved into my kitchen drawer and bought out some elastic bands, because I think I might need those just to keep things in place. I just have these visions that my bear grass is going to just go and shatter off everywhere. And then over my shoulder as well, you can see I've got some flowers in a vase. These are the leftover flowers from my Freddie's Flowers delivery last week. So I've got, I'm going to use it's delphiniums in there, and I might not use the whole head. I'm thinking I might use some of the side shoots, and then I'll show you my flowers close up later on. These are the ones from the garden. I've got a mix of native geranium. I don't know the names of all of them. I think there's 3 varieties in there, and the only one I can name is the Cranesbill geranium, which is the purpley variety. I've also picked some buttercups. I think you can see the flash of yellow on the corner there, that do last surprisingly well as a cut flower. And they open and close, at night time. They close at night and open up in the day. So that's a bit of a risk taker there, because I know that probably it'll only last a day and then the petals will fall off. But it's quite nice to have something a little bit unusual in your flower arrangements. And I've got some Sweet Williams that are growing. They're just coming into bud, so they're not too flower heavy. And I've also got some honeysuckle, again, tight in bud. It's nice to see these sort of textures, and also some pot marigolds as well, the calendula in quite a pale yellow, which I thought would work quite well with my buttercups. So what I'm going to do today, most of the work will be with the camera over my shoulder, so I will bring the camera over and then show you how I'm going to cut up my bear grass to make a sort of all-in-one vase container greenery. So as long as the bundle doesn't fall apart, it'll be all systems go. So just bear with me a moment as I shuffle around and bring in camera number 2. And on comes my bear grass. So I'm going to work with one bunch at a time. So I did rather stump my florist when I asked for a whole bunch of bear grass. So I hope you've been persistent with your florist too, so you have actually got a whole bunch and not just a few stems. So you'll notice at the bottom of your bunch, sometimes it can be a little bit dirty and you may want to clean it. So you would get, you know, almost like you're putting your bunch of bear grass in, you know, a warm bowl of water and, you know, get a scrubbing brush out and scrub it. So you know me that I've skipped this aim, skip this part here. So if you feel yours are dirty, you can clean the ends, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to move that glass out of the way. It's getting, as I'm flinging my bear grass around, it's perilously close to the end of my table. So what I'm going to do with those elastic bands is I'm going to tie them onto my bunch because I want to keep, for the moment, the bunch of grass together. I'm going to end up chopping it up, and you will need to decide how many of these little vases cum containers you can make out of your bunch. Do you want to go quite tall and have a very sort of truncated, these are the stiffer bits of your bear grass, and then have some bits up here, and then use the fluffy bits to mix in with the bottom section? Or do you want to have them much smaller? So I've envisaged that out of each bunch of bear grass, I would probably get 2 with these sort of mini vases, containers that I'm going to construct. But looking at the length of this, I'm wondering actually whether I might get 3 out of each. So just have a think about that before you get snap happy with your scissors, but just think how many bunches do you want to create out of this. So what I'm doing is taking my elastic band, my extra elastic bands, and I'm rolling it up the stems just to hold them together so that when I cut them, it's not going to fall apart. So these are quite small elastic bands, probably came off a bunch of flowers, and I am doubling them up in my hand first of all, and then sliding them on like that. In fact, I'm going to put extra on because at least it'll be held together and easy enough to slide them on, but not quite so easy to slide them when you want to do an emergency cut. So seeing whether I can flatten off that edge at the bottom, and I'm going to cut my bear grass between these 2 elastic bands at the top here. So I'm going to try and go right the way through all in one go. So in actual fact, what I'm doing is just cutting a few stems at a time. Like that. And then I'm going to just neaten the bottom ends. They always get a bit raggedy, and I may need to come back and do this at the end because the idea is that these will stand without any support in the bottom of your container. So it's a bit like when you see a florist making a hand-tied bouquet, that they will fit on the table to show that it can stand up. And that's the look that we're going for, is these little they look like little tree trunks really, that we're then going to fill with flowers at the top. So what I might do here, I'm going to measure up, you know, perhaps I might want to go a bit small. I'm going to put another elastic band on here, it can be wild. Those bits that are escaping, double that up. On the edge there. I'm going to perhaps make this one a tiny bit shorter up at the middle. Nice firm crunch. Is that one going to stand? Yes, it is. And then these nice sort of soft pieces at the bottom and the floaty bits, I'm probably going to keep those, but you could imagine that I could thread some of them through the into my bear grass bunch to give a softer edge. So again, it depends whether you want something that is very sort of upright and structural, or whether you want to incorporate some of the softness of the bear grass right at the end. So that is what we've created. Imagine that standing in my little shallow bowl of water, being the water source. I now need to add my flowers into my little vases that I've created. And you can see already there's bits that are coming out. So you could either spend ages threading them back in or just pull the occasional one out. So this is what I have got in my little bundle. It does truly look like a bit of British countryside, of British, typical British garden flowers. I've got forget-me-nots in there as well, which I forgot to mention. So they're absolutely on their last leggy legs. And then the other flowers were the side shoot. I quite like the side shoots of the delphinium. So I could cut those 3 off there and then put that delphinium back in my vase to enjoy as a longer stem. Now the tricky bit is we need to loosen the elastic bands slightly in order to get our flowers to sit inside. So what I'm going to do first of all, a little bit if you were making a hand-tied bouquet, when you start off with these clean stems, basically meaning you don't have any leaves on them, I need to go through my flowers to clean off the stems. And at this stage I'm thinking, I'm not quite sure whether I want the leaves, some leaves to be on or not. We'll have to have a think about that and change that as we go. And then this is the calendula. Just being slightly careful here as you pull the leaves off, because it does sometimes get stringy bits coming off as well. And my honeysuckle, which is just nice and tight in bloom. Sometimes I prefer the flowers in bud rather than fully open, and it means that you can enjoy them then, and then they will open over the next few days, and you get that little change that you can notice. And that's specifically why I picked the more closed and smaller Sweet Williams, because I didn't want it to be showy all together at once. So picking these off like so. And I did also think that wouldn't the grasses be nice? I don't know whether you've been doing no mow May. I know we're now in June, but we have let our grass grow a little bit longer. And when the grass starts to flower, it does look very pretty. And you could imagine putting that in there as well. Now, what I've got to do now is loosely untie the grass, taking one sort of round of elastic band off, and not making it so loose that it all falls apart, because I need to make some space. Oops, this one has come off. That I can thread my flowers down inside while still having control over what I've got. So perhaps as you get started is to pick something quite sturdy until you get the idea and the hang of it. So I can push that down, and being mindful as well, because your flowers eventually will need to be in water. How deep are you going to put the water into your little bowl? So if you just want the water to be invisible, you're going to want to make sure the stem ends come down the same length as your bear grass. But if you're happy to go deeper, you can put shorter length flowers in. They're asking me how much did I pay for the bunch. I bought 2 bunches and they cost me £8.50, I think. I'm not sure whether I got a deal or not, because she did say that I think I might have got some money off that. So it'd be interesting to know in the chat how much you paid for your flowers as well, your bear grass. So there we go. I've had to be quite daring there. I've only got 2 rounds of elastic bands at the bottom, and can you just see here that I've poked out at the end where that piece of Sweet William is. And you can see here, as I poke down, some of the stems that the bear grass is moving, so you just need to be really, really gentle. And I think probably as you're working, you could be tapping them down occasionally and working with the flow of what you're doing. It's a bit like playing Jenga, this. I'm putting one in the top and pulling one out of the bottom. But you don't really want to be pulling out loads and loads, because you'll find that you won't be left with any grass. But just threading them down until they reach at the bottom. You can't see there. I mean, I can see when I lift that up to the camera. I'm not sure it will focus for you. I can see there's a little green stem there, and there's another green stem there of the flowers. So hopefully I'll be able to get away with minimum amount of water. And then deciding how tall you can go. Now here, because these are garden plant materials, I've got a sort of kink on here at the end. And if I put that down inside, it's going to get a little bit lost. So I might save that one for my shorter stem of flowers. So just bear in mind that the flowers that aren't straight are going to be the tricky ones that you're working with. Again, it's just poking out at the bottom and just slide that back in. And then it's a matter of how many flowers you've got, how many flowers can you put in. Do you want to make something that's really chunky? And perhaps if you've got 2 bunches of bear grass, perhaps combining the 2 bunches together to give you a much thicker amount of bear grass to arrange into. And so I could keep going, but I think probably you've got the idea now. I'm just going to slide those in. That's green spilt's gone a bit over there, so I'm going to snip that one off. And checking, is it standing up? Now it doesn't matter if it's not standing up. It's not a competition. But if you are finding that things aren't standing up properly, sometimes what you can do is, if you trim out the bottom, make a little dip with your flowers. That can sometimes help them stand up. I've also got off to the side, and just bear with me a moment, I've got a little cheat, which is my pin holder. So if you have a pin holder, you could just then impale that, and that would keep your flowers upright. So that is a little cheat. So if you feel you need to cheat, it doesn't matter, because it's about creating something lovely, not that you're showing off. You can get your flowers to stand up on their own. And one thing you will need to watch out for is that sometimes, even though you think you've got a flat container, it's got a slight raised section in the middle. So your flat bottom glass container may not actually be flat bottom. So probably you'll find this bit of the flower arranging really easy, and then actually getting to stand in your bowl, it will probably be the tricky bit. But what you could do, if you've got a bowl that is, or a dish that's perhaps quite small, you could pack them together. So they were like little soldiers all running around together. And then that would create a look as well. So they don't have to be sort of isolated as little placements. You could group them together a bit more. So what if you don't fancy arranging through the bear grass? What you could do is to take your drinking glass and another elastic band and to put that around your glass. And you could create the same effect by mocking it up. So you could take your stems of bear grass out of the bundle and slide them underneath the elastic band. And that would give you a bigger opening to work with if you felt like you wanted to arrange your flowers in a more conventional way. So you could see that you would go all the way around. You possibly, again, might need 2 elastic bands to hold them in place. So these elastic bands aren't very attractive. So once you've finished doing your arrangement, that what you would need to do is to finish off with something a little bit prettier. So this could be a piece of ribbon, it could be a piece of garden twine, or it could be my favourite, which is the bind wire, which I show you, I think, probably nearly every week. So I've got some little offcuts of bind wire that I've saved from previous projects. And you would, once you've finished your flowers, and I will add more flowers in when I make and create with you afterwards. This is just the demo bit, that I would take that round and bind it over the elastic band. So you've got 2 options here. Do you want to, in the muddle there, do you want to take the elastic band off, or just do enough binding that it covers over the elastic band? And I think if you can get away with it, I'll probably keep the elastic band underneath. And then the beauty of this is that when you've got your bind wire in place, you can just twist to tie it, and that would keep it nice and secure. And then you do the same thing at the top end as well. So does that give you enough of an idea of where we're going with this? So I'm going to, when we make and create together, I'm thinking I might put 2 of my bunches together to make a bigger bunch, or I might stick with this and just add more flowers in. Perhaps even if I show it that way around, you get a better view. I will show you from the side later on. And then with my smaller bundle here and with my larger one, that I might decide, I'm going to just whip those out, just add in some of the wispy bits. I'm just going to turn that jar the right way up. It's going to roll off the table. So if you wanted to use some of these wispy bits just to soften up the edges, and because I've used my garden flowers, you might think actually it's, you know, the square edge of the bear grass might be too different to the sort of cottagey nature of the wispy bits of grass. So you can see there, I've added in some of the wispy bits, and that just softened the edges as well. So it's entirely up to you whether you go for this very truncated look or whether you want to soften the ends by adding in the tips of the bear grass. So I'm going to bring the camera round to show you front on. So I will dribble some water into the container I've got just to show you, or let's explore how easy it is to get them to stand up once you've got a little bit of water in front of you. If you just bear with me again, I will switch around and then show you what they look like side on. Good. So that's what we've made. There's only a very few flowers in there, but you can see that I've got lots of flowers on the table and I can spend my time doing that. So it's almost like I've got a sort of little meadow effect. But do you like the very flat top to the bear grass, or would you prefer to soften it? And there I've started to add in some of the longer lengths at the end of the bear grass. Or would you prefer to make something slightly bigger so you get more flowers in by wrapping your bear grass around a drinking glass, and then you've got combination again. You could have all your floaty bits, or you could use all the straight bits. So you've got a bit of a choice of what you do. And then the moment of truth, is it all going to stand up? So I've got my bowl here. And as I say, I do think I've got a slightly raised section in the middle of my dish, but let's have a go. So you can see that I have, you know, I can wallop it down the table to get the bottoms really flat and then get them to stand up. That one I feel is slightly off on the skew, and then decide how much water to put in. So I have made sure that my flowers were coming out at the end of my little bunch of bear grass, and they do seem to be standing up okay. Obviously, as soon as I go and move that, they're going to topple around. But if you wanted a bit more security, and if you do have one of the old-fashioned metal pin holders, you could always put that underneath, and it'll just give you a little bit more security. Of course, as I press it on, things will move around a little bit, so I've lost the very square truncated top there, as all the bear grass sort of moves around the pin holder. But actually, I think that looks I quite like the look of that. It's sort of a halfway house between the truncated end and the very sort of fine bits that are coming up. But you can play around with that. So I'm thinking I've got a little bit of bear grass left here. I've got a whole other bunch. So I'm thinking perhaps I might get 6 little bundles I could then put in this dish. And because they're all kept together, they will look lovely on a coffee table, on the kitchen table, on your dining table. And then as the flowers start to fade, because they will fade quite quickly, these very delicate garden flowers, the bear grass will carry on, and you can pull out the flowers that have gone over and then add in fresh. It'll give you something quite nice to do. When you're looking around the garden, the best, well, our garden certainly is the best at this time of the year, just for a very short few weeks. And it's a bit like going on a treasure hunt every morning. You see what's come up overnight and what's replenished itself, and then go through and cut out just a few stems. So you don't really need a lot of flowers to create something that's got really loads and loads of impact. So if you're happy with that, I'm going to sign off for our ladies that are watching on record. So thank you for supporting me, all of you who don't actually come live to class. I've really enjoyed seeing the photographs that you've been emailing me and messaging me. So it's lovely to see all of those. And for those ladies of you, and I didn't ask how many of you were staying to Make and Create with me, so hopefully some of you are. I will turn off the camera, well, stop the recording anyway, and then we can have a proper to and fro, a proper chat about what I've been doing, and I can answer any of your specific questions before we start getting creative. I am conscious that there's glassware on the table, and I'm just sort of out of my eye line, keep thinking that it's going to get knocked, so I'm just going to move that one out of the way as I say goodbye to my ladies on record, and I will catch up with you next time.